Glen Anderson's the president of ETC Group, and Shawn Mathiesen is the construction engineering senior consultant at Banner Health, which is, I believe, the largest employer in the state of Arizona, if I heard correctly, or one of them. So it's a huge hospital group in the American Southwest. Thanks, guys. Take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. So my name's Shawn Mathiesen. I've been with Banner Health for about 15 years, just over, and it's been a big evolution that we've seen throughout the organization, that as we've come to it now, we've got 28 major medical centers with over 12 million square feet that are integrated into our remote operations center and continuing through our journey with monitoring-based commissioning. We are the largest non-government employer in the state of Arizona, and we also operate in 5 additional states: California, Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada, Nebraska. And we were targeting originally to achieve about $5 million per year in energy savings, but as a result, we ended up achieving a little over $11 million. I think we're actually closer to about $12 million right now. And Glenn, I don't know if maybe you want to argue with me over it right now, but yeah. And what's really been the driver of that is us integrating in with some of our partners and bringing in-house and realigning our corporate structure to support moving forward in this direction. If we actually look at how our organization was previously structured, we had this decentralized operations where each facility, each hospital operated independently of one another.
Hey, Shawn, I know you love the elephant, but why don't you go? You went too far.
Oh, did I?
Yep.
There we go. So when we originally started, we had 26 hospitals that we were looking to integrate, and the plan was, well, the challenge was that each of those 26 hospitals was operating in their own little silo. They reported up through their own leadership structure to the leaders of that hospital, and so facility services, development and construction, all those teams were fairly siloed from one another. And we needed a way to really align at a corporate level and be able to have repeatable, sustainable opportunities and practices and procedures. At this point in time, the only real channel for that was the leaders of each of these groups were trying to get together on about a monthly basis and share some of their best practices and procedures that they've discovered, you know, whether that be a new vendor that they had found for chiller service agreements or anything like that. But it really wasn't moving things forward. And at that point in time, we had started a energy team, and that energy team was from we had members from development and construction, we had some vendors, and we had some local facilities team members. And what we started to do was discuss some of these best practices and procedures, and we started to look at the same opportunities that a lot of the rest of the industry was looking at the time, you know, monitoring-based commissioning, or not monitoring-based, retro commissioning-based opportunities, where we would go through and we would make the adjustments, do the retro commissioning, and then start to see additional challenges. So we started to look for a pathway for a better solution to that. And to do that, we looked at, why does it keep jumping to? We looked at some pilot opportunities, which included 2 of our facilities. And we went through and started to try to prevent that drift that we were seeing after 3 to 5 years. And so we started with monitoring-based commissioning initiatives, utilizing fault detection analytics laid over top of the building automation systems, bringing in the utility meter data to monitor real-time data as far as how the facilities were performing, bringing in all the data from the variable frequency drives and the chillers. We began looking for new technologies as well. This is where we ended up identifying opportunities with a group called Climate Check that helps us monitor the refrigeration cycle of the chillers all the way through and get some of that performance assessments, as well as help us identify whether or not we're looking at potential early failures on the chillers or any performance issues there. What we found was when we did the 2 pilots, they were both successful. The first one reached the target that we had. The second one, though, we had a target of about $200,000 a year in energy savings that we were looking to achieve. And we ended up delivering nearly $450,000 in annual energy savings. And that facility actually continued to achieve energy savings quarter over quarter for, I think, the next 2 or 3 years. Glenn, do you remember offhand?
It actually continued. So the first year you're showing is 2015, and up until 2020, every single quarter was lower than the quarter the year before.
Right. So then we moved forward with redeploying. Now that we understood the practices for the organization, what could be successful, that ended up helping create this justification for a new centralized opportunity. And we identified that this opportunity was not just alone in the energy side, it was on the facility services side, on the development and construction side. And so what we ended up doing as a holistic organization was restructuring all of those services into one centralized corporate group. The new centralized corporate model allowed us to actually have alignment all the way across the board. And the ROC sat at that corporate level, the Remote Operations Center. And it initially began with just one Remote Operations Center manager, which was myself, the 5 building automation controls technicians, 2 analysts, which are mechanical engineer, classically trained individuals. And then we also realized the need to partner with some external resources, such as ETC Group and our controls vendors, mechanical vendors, and so on. What we ended up doing, though, was we ended up then creating policies and procedures for all of these facilities to now follow, and we started to deploy these measures throughout the organization. There was certainly some feedback that some of the hospitals like to continue to operate in their own little silo, but when we started to show them that this was a opportunity for them, this was a service offering that we were now actually deploying, it allowed us to gain more of that buy-in from the local teams. The local teams then started to utilize us as exactly that, like they would utilize a controls vendor when they have a problem. They could reach out to us. And we were there providing them guidance rather than just trying to give an agenda to them and say, this is what we are going to do. It was more of a supportive role that allowed us to capture that. The big question that comes into play, though, is what's next? And so when we look at what's next throughout the organization, there's a lot of things that we're still utilizing. I mean, again, we've got a ton of data that we've now integrated in. So it's a question of how do we best use that for preventative maintenance, advanced analytics, multiple integrations with our workforce management system. We're working on asset management throughout the organization as well. It's a ton of opportunities, but thank you all for your time. And Aaron, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, guys. You know, I've worked on setting up or growing some ROCs in my time, and you always have the sort of energy costs, sustainability, moving towards proactive maintenance and resilience as the big drivers. I'm curious in this case, though, what the experience has been like with what you've set up and how it's allowed you to respond to the pandemic.
That's a great question. Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, my first thing was right after what you had said, Shawn, about, you were getting some better connections with facilities. And so I think one of the first things is that relationship that got established because, the pandemic hit, a lot of people were starting to talk about, oh, let's bring in 100% outside air. And I know some of the questions that started coming up for facilities are like, oh, should we go to 100% outside air? Well, if you do that in the incorrect manner, say you bring in 100% outside air and you don't control your return fans properly, also in your emergency department, you can positively pressurize that. Then you're pushing the infected air out into the other areas. So I know from number one, for the pandemic, questions were coming in. So everyone was able to support the facilities better. So there's definitely a lot of alignment there. And then of course the other obvious one was being able to monitor things remotely. Shawn, I mean, didn't you put your whole team ended up and is still working remote, correct?
Correct, yeah. And to what Glenn spoke about, I mean, the facilities, again, they looked at us as a service, an opportunity for them, a resource. So when the pandemic hit and the questions inevitably were, what do we do and how do we do it? A lot of those questions came straight to us because they were looking for guidance as well as everybody.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great to hear. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.